las 10 de la noche y es la hora de opinar. Hoy concluimos con nuestra cobertura especial que hemos venido haciendo desde la Feria Internacional del Libro en Guadalajara, con John Irving, gran escritor norteamericano, quien está presentando su más reciente novela, Avenida de los Misterios. Quédese aquí en Foro TV que ya comenzó la hora de opinar. Bueno, seguimos en esta cobertura especial que estamos haciendo, como todos los años, desde la Feria Internacional del Libro en Guadalajara. Y nos da un enorme gusto tener a uno de los autores, realmente un autor espléndido, un autor pues, que ha vendido un montonal de libros, que ha escrito, cuyos libros se han llevado a la pantalla. Me refiero a John Irving. John está presentando su más reciente novela, que es Avenida de los Misterios, de la colección Andanzas. Well, thank you, John, for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Me acompaña Javier Tello. Javier.
John, welcome. Leo.
Thank you very much. So, the title of your new novel, it's Avenida de los Misterios, which is an avenue here in, well, not here, in Mexico City.
Yes.
Actually. And one of the main characters, the central character, actually is Juan Diego, who happens to be Mexican. I would like to start. I would like to ask you, what is the relationship of John Irving with Mexico?
Well, it's a long relationship and a complicated one. I first came to Mexico, as many Americans of my age did, to visit a friend who had run away from the draft during the Vietnam War, and he had come here, and he couldn't go home, and the only way I could see him and see how he was doing was to come here.
Where was
the way in Mexico City.
In Mexico City.
But the only way I could see friends of mine who went to Canada too. But in the case of Avenida de los Misterios, it's a tortured, a serpentine history, because for 20 years this story was, how do you say, guion, a screenplay, not a novella.
Yeah.
It was just a movie. It only concerned the childhood of these characters. It was only set in Mexico. No older Juan Diego, no story in the Philippines, just the small window of time when Juan Diego is 14 and his sister Lupe is 13. But for 8 years, before the director and I located the movie in Mexico, we tried to get the movie made in India. Also children in a Jesuit orphanage, also children who work in an Indian circus at some risk, also a kindly Jesuit mission that wants to adopt them as orphans. Same story. But we couldn't get the film made. So we first came to Oaxaca in 1997 to look at situations involving the children who perform as clowns or acrobats in Mexican circuses, looking at the orphanages in Oaxaca, the Catholico orphanages especially, looking at the circumstances of the poor children for whom the circus is an opportunity, such as Niños de la Basura, the children we found working in the basurero. We came to Oaxaca and to Mexico City for 2-3 weeks at a time, sometimes as much as a month, in 1997, 2002, 2003, 2008, 2009, 2014.
This was
For
only in the
all
city of
this
Oaxaca?
time, for all of this time, until the trip to Mexico City between Christmas and New Year's 2008, 2009. For all of that time, it was just a screenplay, not a novel.
Okay, okay.
Just a movie. But in Mexico City, between Christmas and New Year's 2008, 2009, I suddenly saw, well, if it were a novel, I would begin with Juan Diego 40 years later, when he's 54, not 14, and he's going to the Philippines to keep the promise he makes to El Gringo Bueno, the hippie draft dodger in the bathtub in Oaxaca in 1970. And I'm in a car with my director, Martin, and I said this to him, and Martin said, "That doesn't sound like a movie." And I said, "No, it's not. It's a novella, and I should write it first." So that's what I mean by complicated, my history with Mexico.
So
it began with the draft dodger, and in the end, the reason it became a novel is because of the draft dodger in the novel, because of El Gringo Bueno. In the story, I suddenly thought, Juan Diego should keep that promise. We should get to see him keep it.
Okay.
40 years later.
And what happened with your friend, by the way, with the guy who dodged the draft here in Mexico? He went back to the U.S. or
no?
No, you don't want to talk. Okay, yeah. Javier.
You just mentioned how you thought the book would end, and we know that you like to start a book thinking about endings and thinking about the title of the book. Tell us about this particular title. To any Mexican, Calzada de los Misterios, Avenida de los Misterios is very, very well known. But how did you come to that particular title?
Titles, although you're right, I always begin stories knowing the end. Often I know the end before I know how it begins. I know the end first. Well, in the story of Juan Diego as a child, I realize after he loses his sister, the Jesuit orphanage owns him. There are only two people who want to adopt him. They're both gay men. The Catholic Church will never allow this, unless there's a milagro.
Okay.
Unless the Virgin Mary herself would have to do something. So I always saw that the end of the story of Juan Diego's childhood in Mexico is when the giant statue of the Virgin in the Jesuit temple in Oaxaca appears to shed actual tears. Yes. That's the milagro. That's what allows him to be adopted by Flor and Senor Eduardo. That's the end of the film.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. As soon as I imagined him going to the Philippines as an older man, I knew he would never find the grave of the good gringo's father. I knew he would never get to the cemetery. I knew he would have his heart attack in Guadalupe Viejo, the slum where there's another Guadalupe church in Manila. So all of that is true to what I saw. But for many years, the working title of the movie was Son of the Circus, Hijo del Circo.
Hijo del Circo.
The same as the title of an old novel of mine. That's what the director and I were calling it. But our first trip to Mexico City to see the Basilica of Nuestra Senora Guadalupe, we're sitting in the car.
For a long time.
A long time. And I looked out the window, and there is Avenida de los Misterios. And I said to the driver, "Is that the name of the street?" "Oh, of course," he said. Mm-hmm. And I said to Martin, "That's our title."
Okay.
Let me ask you, because the story here in Avenida de los Misterios has some kind of, it's kind of a Dickens tale. I would say from Oaxaca, what happened with the guy
Yes.
in Oaxaca.
Children
But-
at risk. Very
Exactly.
Dickens, yes.
But on the other hand, there is also this tale, an American dream tale, no? Would you say that you combine those kind of stories in your novel?
Yes, I think so. I think that's also a connection that I've always felt to Mexico, and I feel to what my childhood connection to the United States was, although we've become a very different country. But the history of the Old West, the cowboy history, the outlaw history, that's a part of the American mythology. There's something of a cowboy story or an outlaw story to Avenida de los Misterios. There's something about a Western about it. Perhaps that's why a character of American cowboy mythology, such as Billy the Kid, El Chivato, as you call him, is so popular here. Well, with me too. To me, the Western is the only romantic mythology that's sort of original to the U.S. and Mexico. We both share it, often on different sides, but we both share it.
Yeah.
You say you're a worst case scenario kind of guy, that heroes often are flawed and in that sense more interesting. And you're also an admirer of Dickens. But what are your thoughts about happy endings? Because you can have all of that and have a happy ending. Dickens certainly had quite a few happy endings after a very long, dramatic,
and torturous story.
But what is your attitude towards happy endings? Being a worst case scenario guy.
I certainly wish one for myself and for the people I love. But I don't think they make for the best kind of novels.
Okay.
I think that I'm also, like Dickens, a comic writer. I see the comedy in human beings right up until what they do is no longer funny. I like that contrast between a situation that is comical right up to the moment of the accident that is no longer funny.
Well, Garp
Yes.
certainly has a few of those.
Yes, El Mundo Según Garp is a good example of that. But
But would you change the ending of Great Expectations or Oliver Twist? Or...
you know, Oliver Twist is an early novel.
Okay.
If Dickens had written it later, he would have changed the beginning.
Okay.
The beginning is a mess. The best film, there have been many films, the best film of Oliver Twist is Roman Polanski's Oliver Twist. He changed the end, he changed the beginning.
Okay.
He got rid of all the stupid brother connections. It's an amateur work. It's only a second novel.
Second novel, that's right.
No, I don't. As much as I say I like unhappy endings, the original ending to Great Expectations is self-pitying. Pip feels sorry for himself, which we've seen before.
Yeah.
We see it for the whole last half of the book.
Yeah.
Pip is a disappointment to himself, but also to us.
Okay.
So I think it's better that he sees no shadow of another parting from Estella. Frankly, having met Estella, I think that's a bad bet.
Okay.
You know, but not so sure it is a happy ending.
We have to make a commercial break, but we're going to come back. Vamos a regresar con John Irving en un momento más. Seguimos platicando de su más reciente novela, Avenida de los Misterios. Bueno, seguimos platicando con John Irving, su más reciente novela, Avenida de los Misterios. And let me ask you, some of your novels have been adapted to screenplays for movies. And actually, you said that the idea of this book started as a screenplay. Would you see this book becoming a movie or a TV series? Now it's very popular to have those kinds of formats. Would you see that?
I have every intention to see Avenida de los Misterios made as a film.
Okay.
It began as a film. I've written many drafts of the screenplay.
Okay, so you
before I
are
wrote the novel. So the screenplay, the guion for Avenida de los Misterios, it already exists.
Okay.
I want to make some changes in it. Both the director and I see some things we'd like to make more claro. But it's still a work in progress. But I expect it to be a film, a Spanish language film. I'll be disappointed if it isn't made as a film.
Okay.
So it's definitely a project that I intend to see through, to make this as a film.
It's a very particular story, the story of writers' relationship with Hollywood. You've had an important role in that long story that has been going on for a century now. That includes great writers.
I had a good relationship with Lasse Hallström, the Swedish director who made the Cider House Rules.
You won an Oscar for that.
Yes.
Yes, other people I thought should have won Oscars for that film who didn't. Only Michael Caine and I did. We had 7 nominations.
Well,
Yes.
But it was a good collaboration between Lasse Hallström and me. We connected. A little film made from only the first part of A Widow for 1 Year, in Espanol, Una Mujer Difícil, I think. It was the title in Spanish. A little film called The Door in the Floor, which was written and directed by Todd Williams. I worked very hard with him on that screenplay. I think that's the...
Oh, it's a great movie.
I think it's the second best
It's a great movie.
adaptation of my... next to Cider House, I like that one best.
It's about a writer, no?
The woman, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And well, both the daughter who grows up, she's
Yeah.
just a child in The Door in the Floor,
Yeah.
is a writer, but also the father is a kind of creepy children's writer.
Yeah.
He's working on parts 2 and 3 now, the same guy. I declined when Tony Richardson asked me to write The Hotel New Hampshire. I loved Tony. We were good friends. But in Tony's case, I knew he was just being polite.
Okay.
I knew that he wanted to write it himself.
Okay.
And it was just a courtesy that he asked me, would you write the screenplay? And I could see he was very relieved when I said, no, I don't think so.
But let me ask you about that, because part of the problem with being a screenwriter is that if you're a storyteller, and you're a storyteller, is not being in control of the story. The actor, the director, the producer, there's going to be focus groups. Have you ever thought of directing, to be in control of that story yourself? Or is that...
I've been asked this question many times. You know what I always say. When I feel like being a director, I write a novel.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, yeah.
No, I'm too old to presume that I could learn direction. Okay. If I wanted to be a director, I should have begun
because you were
when I was younger.
Okay.
I've been around a lot of movies. I will be, I think, around a few more.
Yeah.
I'm already working on 2 right now. I learned how to write a screenplay when I wrote my first novel. I worked for 2 years in Vienna with the director Irving Kershner to try to make Setting Free the Bears. He taught me how to write a screenplay. He was a great guy. And we were both crushed when Columbia Pictures pulled the plug and didn't make the movie. But I didn't realize, because I was still young, still in my 20s, I didn't realize that it was a good experience.
Okay.
Because from that moment I began to see the possibility of writing visually for the screen, for film, for television. And I learned more from that experience than the sort of bitter disappointment I felt when Columbia didn't make the film.
Okay.
You know, you take those kinds of disappointments when you're young harder. When you get older, you realize
it's part of the game.
I learned something.
Absolutely.
You know, you can't say from every experience that you do learn something, but that guy really taught me how to write a screenplay, and I owe him, because by the time Lasse and I were working on the Cider House Rules, Lasse was surprised and said, "How do you know how to do this? Isn't this your first time?" And I said, "No, it's just the first time anybody's going to make it."
Well, we just have time for one more question, and we are asking all of the authors, all of the novelists that we are interviewing, the same question. And the question is, what book would you like Donald Trump to read before he assumes office on January 20th? Which one would you recommend? We're asking the same question, huh? to everyone.
Yeah.
Don't get depressed.
It's hard not to.
Absolutely. We are very depressed in Mexico, as
Well,
you might imagine. No?
Actually, yeah. Actually, I do know which novel of mine I would ask him to read, which is The Cider House Rules. I would ask him to read the book and see the movie, but especially to make his terrible choice for a vice president read it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Because the person who's Mr. Trump has told so many lies. He's been all his life such a dishonest businessman that we don't know the difference between what he says and what he will do, because he's said a million things he will never do. And when I first heard of him, I remember when he was living in Manhattan and was a liberal Democrat.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
So, you know,
Pro-choice.
All of the above.
Yeah.
I would insist that he would read this novel about what the world was like when abortion was illegal, unavailable, and unsafe. But I would insist he make Pence read it too, because no one knows what Mr. Trump's agenda is. I would be surprised if Mr. Trump knows.
But we know about Pence.
But we know what Pence will want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's an ideologue.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's that frightening. He believes he's listening to the voice of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these, to me, that's very dangerous.
John, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm
Thank
very sure that Avenida de los Misterios is going to be a great success. And of course, I'm going to be waiting for your mini-series in HBO.
I hope
about the world according to the
me too.
Absolutely.
Me too.
Absolutely.
I'm
And of course,
hoping
this movie also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Javier.
Thank you.
Gracias. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.